hear me?
Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Bill, Kevin, and myself are here to write on the back of language in the next Wasteless Word Talks. And the term today, freedom. So I will start with you, Bill. If you hear the term freedom, what came first to your mind, please?
In America, on Friday will be the 4th of July, when the founders of our country wrote the Declaration of Independence from England. That, of course, came to my mind first, and right behind it is this voice saying this is a very deep word.
All right. What about you, Kevin? What came to your mind first?
I think when I think of freedom, I think of this thing which is disappearing in Europe at a remarkably fast rate. So whatever freedoms we were told we had, we're now having them taken away in the name of freedom, interestingly enough. So for me, freedom is just a big con to trick the population of Europe.
Kevin, I do remember that not last time, but I think the time before, you mentioned one strange decision by the Danish government where it was forbidden to talk about Palestine or something like that. And you said it will not be accepted by the society. Is there any follow-up on that?
All I know is that all of my friends who have children in those classes didn't give permission for their children to take part in it. Which I think is a really interesting way of saying, you know, we're not playing your game. So I don't know. It could be that this was a Copenhagen thing, so I don't know how the rest of the country responded, but parents were really, really, really annoyed by this. And so I think it was a smart move of the people I know to withdraw their children from taking part.
I had today quite interesting talk about nothing. My guest was AI expert. He is teaching AI how to use for the employees and so on. But what was interesting, he is not the guy who say AI is everything. He just was really critical thinking is part of his job. And it was very interesting when we talk about, and one thing which we touched, I think, was what about the freedom of writing? Do you need freedom to write?
Yeah, I would look at the Soviet Union or China. Whatever you write, you have to be looking over your shoulder as to who's going to read this, and am I going to get in trouble for having these thoughts or for expressing these thoughts. I don't think it's so bad in the U.S., but that could be changing.
In the UK, if you're writing movies, the government takes an active interest in what the story is about, and if it's supporting the wrong side.
Are you feeling that, Kevin? When
yeah, I've been I've been told a couple of times that there are some subjects which you shouldn't touch, and one of them is making Russia look good.
Is making what?
Making Russia look like decent human beings. That's not what the government message is at the moment.
That's interesting because we just published my wife's autobiography, and it doesn't show the Soviet Union in a good light, but it does show that the people on the street are the same as the people on the street over here, in many ways. So I would be criticized for that.
Have you heard this new initiative that's going on? I think it's in Seattle, around the Washington area, where they're going to connect up a few thousand Americans with a few thousand Russians and just get them to talk and stream it all so that people can see how much they've got in common or how much they don't have in common. I think this is a fantastic idea.
Russians over in Russia now, or Russians who have immigrated to the U.S.?
Now, Russians living in Russia now talking to Americans, just to form a bridge and a bond and an understanding before our government set us on a path to war. I think it's a fantastic idea.
I think there was a few years ago, it was before COVID, I think, and after COVID as well. So they make something like piece of art, which looked like a gate. There was a camera. So you look inside other city and you can speak with the people who are just now there. It was quite interesting project. And I know there exists they call it, I think, 3D booth. So you have like a phone booth where you go in there all the time of camera, the second is somewhere else, and it's really 3D. So it's like standing there and talking there. I think it's an American project, if I do remember properly. But, you know, when I was a child, I lived in this communist state. And there was a lot of we cannot speak about and we cannot say about. West was all the time evil. No matter what, on the West was evil. But it was interesting when the Iron Curtain fell down and we went for the first time there. There was no evil. The grass was green, the people were nice, and so on. But I was in 1990 or 1991, I'm not sure. There was a Gorbachev at the time in Russia. I was on a camp, a 1 month camp for students to work in agriculture in Russia. We have been close to Moscow, so it was quite interesting. And yeah, so the experience was very different. And I saw for the first time when I came back by train, it took a few days, that some of the members of the team, and this has been 16, 17 years old, has been kissing the ground on the border to Slovakia. So being really happy to be back. So it was quite interesting. And what is interesting is the approach to freedom, because this is why I ask about the writing, because I spoke with Leslie in the noon discussion, and she expressed that in fact, to be able to write, she has to be free. She has to be connected to the universe, as she says. And I need some way of freedom as well. If I'm too squeezed, I do not write, or at least I do not write good.
I think the one thing to bear in mind is with freedom comes responsibility. And as long as you accept that responsibility, freedom is fine. I think that, going back to Soviet times, I was reading, I think it was also by a Belarusian woman, and she was saying that in one respect, there was freedom within the society because the rules were so set out that everybody knew exactly where they stood, what they could say, what they couldn't say, which in a way is a kind of freedom. Whereas in the West, the freedoms were never that clearly defined, what you can do, what you can't do. Some were, some weren't. And of course, a lot of people would abuse the border freedoms we had in the West than they would ever dream of in the East.
Yes, Bill?
I'm remembering the last trip we took to Russia, which was, I think, in '05. And one of the things that I realized is that I was that the information was two-way. I was seeing things and being surprised by what I saw, and I was expecting to see things that I did not, or that I saw the opposite of, because of my prejudices, assumptions, whatever. Um, so, so I'm really excited to hear about these projects that have people in the West and people in Russia having a conversation, and that should be expanded. We should all do that. We should all do that. And people in Africa, and people in South America, we need to talk. just like what we're doing here. I've got somebody in Denmark and somebody in outside of Prague and somebody in the U.S. And we talk. And one of the things we realize is we're not so different.
It is interesting. In the noon discussion, there is almost every time Tracy. Tracy is Chinese living in the US. And Tracy has worked a lot of with language. So she's moderator and she does a lot of things. And all the time, she has some Chinese proverb at the end. And I asked her, expecting there will be a lot of about freedom. And she said, Michael, there are almost none in Chinese because in Chinese society, freedom of a person is nothing positive. It's something like you separate from the society. So it was quite interesting approach. And she used, instead of Chinese proverb, she said some from Hungary. I cannot repeat it. I do not remember. But it was quite interesting how really the freedom is defined. And I'm just now wondering, we are all the time asking, what is the opposite of freedom? Is it slavery? I think slavery is just part of the possible opposites. But there is much more. What do you think?
So your description of the lady with the proverbs, she is saying that in China, if you have freedom, you're not joined with the population. So it's a negative.
It's some way, it's a negative approach. This is why they don't have proverbs for that.
Because if you take that further, it means that the opposite of freedom is rules.
Is what?
Is rules, where everything
Rules.
is defined.
That's
This word reminds me of a word we did some time ago, patriot or patriotic. So freedom, when you first say that, it rings on my ears like something good, but there are negative sides to it.
What about nature and freedom? Is nature the representative of freedom?
I don't think so. I think nature is more rule-based than we are.
I'm not sure, of course, they have some borders and all the animals which they create and they can smell and so on. But in some way, nature does not have the rules. It just follow what is possible. Is it possible to grow there? I will try to grow there. If I'm successful, I will be big. If not, I will die. So I think in some way, I asked a colleague in here in the morning what she doesn't speak English, but I said, this time I will ask you in English. And I say the term freedom. She closed her eyes and she smiled. That was the first reaction because she said, I see peace. And in my country, freedom and peace are generally connected, these two words in English. We can say one is representing the others. And I explained her, she said, I know that it's not exactly the same, but the first was really the smile. And it was strange because all the terms before, or many terms before, nothing came in front of her eyes, nothing. She said, sorry, I don't see anything. But with this, it was quite interesting reaction. And how will you experience?
Now, to say, one of the interesting things about freedom is asking which freedoms are we missing?
Isn't isn't freedom something that we feel ourselves, like your friend who answered peace? So it's something that we allow ourselves and that you can feel a personal freedom, even if you live in a very uh, stressful environment.
I think it is based on the personal level because everybody has the freedom set up a different way. I have the second thoughts. You probably know that movie Hair, and it's a Czech movie maker who made it in the US. For me, that movie was really expression of freedom. It was so strong. Until today, I have a CD playing it all the time around because it's so powerful images in there for me. And but I think it's somehow based on the personal level. You know, you can be in a marriage and you must not be free, or you are in marriage because you feel free, or it can be in a company, in a society. It doesn't matter. It's really came from inside out, and I think it's connected with this human with big letters, finding it in a human with small letters, because many forgot it. I think it's connected this way of inventing or reinventing ourselves.
Actually, that's really interesting because, in a way, if you think about it, the lack of freedom is a source of huge inspiration for humans. You know, the way we change society to get the vote, to have democracy, to end slavery, to do whatever it is. But every time we feel restricted, the human mind will find a way to defeat being oppressed.
What I thought first, Michael, when you asked the question of freedom, my mind wanted to list freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of what, that long list. I don't think that's what freedom is. I think freedom is, I like her answer. I think freedom is peace.
Now, we say in Czech, and I think the same can be said in English, peace of mind.
Right.
So freedom is peace of mind. This is one of Czech proverbs or something like that. And I think that's exactly that. The question is if there is something which everyone would like to have this, or everyone will get this peace of mind, because we get it from a different sources. Somebody have it because he has or she has a lot of money. So things, I have peace of mind, but it's not true. I know it's not true. But they feel like that, or they have a role or whatever. Today in the morning, I have another a discussion, and I make quite interesting finding. Uh, Answers put you asleep, but the questions wake you up. And it's your decision on which you will spend your time. And it was so surprising for me.
There's um, there's a related topic, and that is people in the world generally are um, happy or they're angry, generally. Um, and if you said another way, my grandmother used to say, if you if you look for good, you will find it. If you look for good long enough, it will find you. And it's the same way with bad. And some people look for bad. They continually are trying to find what's wrong with this and what's wrong with you and what's wrong, and they find it. And after a while, it finds them. So the question of peace, I think, can be added to that. If you look for peace, you will find it. And after you look for long enough, it will find you. And there are a lot of people in the world who are not looking for peace. They're not looking for good for whatever reason.
Kevin?
Yeah, I think we're living in a time now where peace is no longer a good thing. I mean, the European Union is talking about going to war, that everybody needs to spend more money on weapons and blah, blah, blah. Where it should be the other way around. I mean, with the invention of the internet and the way we can now communicate with each other, it should be a time of peace and exploring each other, getting to know each other to prevent wars. But instead, we're rearming. It's pure lunacy.
So I'm not going to disagree with you, Kevin. I don't think I've ever disagreed with you. But when I walk on the beach and I see the neighbors, including the guy at the beach who flies the Trump flag, right? We talk about the weather, about his daughter, about good things, good things. And we sit and have conversations. And on the walk on the beach, I may have conversations with 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 neighbors, many of whom I don't know their name. But I see them there, and we are a community. And what you just described, I agree that that's what CNN and the media wants us to be. And that's because as a salesman, I was always told fear and greed are what sell. Peace doesn't sell.
No.
And Trump knows that very well. Get people riled up, get people angry. And the newspapers have learned that. You don't get headlines by saying everybody's happy today. But what do you, in your little corner of the world, what do you see? And I see a lot of people being good to each other. And I can't solve the world. I can't stop the war. But I can in my little corner of the world. So the question then is, how do I spread that? Right?
Yeah, because I think generally people are really, really nice. That's just how we are as human beings. We are nice to each other, we're nice to our neighbors. But somehow we can be manipulated by our politicians to hate this person, to hate that person, and if we could talk to them, we wouldn't hate them at all. If we understood them, we sat down and had a beer with somebody you think is an absolute monster, it could find out that they're really a nice person.
It is all about the language and communication, as we said many times. So it's really, I think that, it will be with the freedom, and peace will be the same like with the waste. Because not a single politician will say to you, freedom is bad or peace is bad. They will not say that. They said we need war to be peaceful, which is bullshit, of course. But they will never say you have to be aggressive. No. But still, they push it through the media, through the messages, and so on. They can push you and change the people in a way they like to have us. But if we really resist, and we said it many times, if we don't switch the media, if we don't read, we just speak with the people. It will be such a great movement. I just read just before we joined one of the news delivered to me regarding in the Industry 5.0 development control was a message from Argentina that Milei's changes are good for everyone in Argentina. I am confused because I have some friends in Argentina, including the ambassador, and he said, no, for the ordinary people, we have less than we have before. And the rich people has more. And there is something, I don't know how it's called, Bill, this Trump new policy, whatever, rich should become richer and the poor poorer. I don't know how it's called.
He calls it the big beautiful bill.
Yes.
It, it's an all-inclusive bill that there's a project 2025 that the Republicans, the right-wing people, the conservatives have been putting together for the last 5 years, and he completely disavowed it. Said, I don't believe in that stuff. That's not what we're going to do." And the big beautiful bill just touches every one of the points. So
You know,
we'll see.
you
Nothing's
know,
forever. Nothing's forever.
on the other hand, you have a great PR. You know, if you say, I am the big, beautiful Bill,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's me.
that's me. Listen to me. Buy my books.
But I found this one really strange thing here. In Denmark, we pay a lot of tax, really a lot of tax. And when you pay tax, the health system works, the transportation system works, the infrastructure is fantastic. Education is free. It's great. But now they want to use our taxes to buy weapons. And I got 3 Danish boys who are all of military age, who I don't want my taxes to buy weapons to put into their hands. And certainly not those weapons to be used against Anna living in Moscow. I think when we paid our taxes, if we could tick boxes and say, I want my money through here, 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 and not any of these, and actually really control spending, because the politicians' great power, of course, comes from money, and it's our money. And surely we should have the freedom to say, no weapons with my money.
You know, there was in Czech, we have a people paid television. So it should be the general, it's not state television, it's called Czech television, and the radio. And we pay some amount monthly, everyone, no matter whether you have electricity or a TV or a radio, you just pay. And they never had enough money, so they look for more money for these 2 organizations. And just now I came with the idea, every business owner should pay. And there is some for hotel owners and so on. And everybody must register. But there is exception of payment, and this is for the companies or entrepreneurs who has, I think, less than 25 employees, something like that. I am the only employee in my company, and I'm the only, but still I have to register, which I did. Somebody took the time and calculated how much money was wasted through registering someone who does not pay anything. They came to 160 million Czech crowns, which is not small amount of money. But in our country, I would like to have this system which you describe, because this I will call freedom or I will have the freedom to say what will happen with the money I pay. Today, I only know they are lost some way on the way, including insurance, including all the stuff. And we just started a project to try to calculate how much insurance companies pay back and how much they get. Because we pay a lot of whole life and few get something back, but the money is not there. Where is the money? It's disappeared. Same for duties. This is why we have this national debt. And we just spoke with some economists, and they say it's not possible to work without debt, but it's not true. Few people, if they get their money together, of the richest one, there will be no debt. So simple it will be. But they don't want, because they don't want us free. And debt is something which really, maybe, I think that maybe one of the opposite term to freedom, maybe debt, can be one of those.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Because it's not just the economical debt. You have a debt because you've been to school and whatever, so we can call it debt. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, debt is a kind of slavery.
And I think it's really easy to get rid of it. Just talk. As Bill says, just meet a neighbor and start talking. As I said, I hand my business card to someone and he see human and he start to talk. And that's so interesting, you know, even the president or whatever, cleaning lady, they act exactly the same. It is so easy, but nobody did it because the media and everything, it's in the hands of giants. So it's not easy to reach 8 billion people all around the globe. This is why they are so angry what we are doing. I just find out, for example, that our talks are blocked on YouTube. They are blocked. Some people cannot see it. We have very low numbers, but the people told me, sorry, we would like to look at it, but we cannot access it, you know, and it's coming there and out. And so, but it's not because the people do not want to, but because somebody has the hand on the switch and he can switch us off. So simple it is. So to be without the data and so on will be very interesting. And it must be controlled, of course, or planned, that we get used to it, that we do not panic after the data are not there. And our generation, yours and mine, can survive without electricity for 1 day, 2 days. It's what? We will survive. The younger ones without data, it's very hard, very hard. I just told to Bill that just before we met, there was a news that Amazon will employ soon more robots than human workers. And the next news was that Google, since from 2020, doubled the consumption of electricity to run their servers, which for me, it's connected to water. And the third news in the same set of news was that hackers attacked in Norwegian, attacked the dam and let all the water out because it can be remotely steered, which is a horrible thing. If you know water is so valuable and some crazy stupid people just play with the dam and open it. It's a game. So freedom is very interesting, but I think it was you, Kevin, I'm not sure whether it was Bill, who said that my freedom ends up on the freedom of the other, or something like that is being said.
Your freedom to swing your arms stops at my nose.
Yeah. So the question is, yes?
No, I was just thinking also that, you know, human beings, the way we function in society and with each other is through patterns of behavior. And if you see people operating outside those patterns, we feel really uncomfortable by it. And it could be that they're exercising their freedom, but for the rest of us, it makes us feel really, really uncomfortable. So in a way, proper freedom is to be able to understand and behave inside a system. You see what I mean? Because pure freedom is pure anarchy, but to understand and have a system and a set of conventions that we're all happy with allows us to be freer, but inside a restricted model.
I just wonder how it works with the very first people. They cannot write, they cannot even speak, they can somehow communicate. And still they build societies, they build a lot of things, you know. and it worked somehow. Then came someone who was more clever than the other and says, okay, why should I work when they can work for me? And it's changed, but it's, I don't know, 100,000, 200,000, I don't know how many years back. Are we not able to really get it back? Because I think in some way the anarchy, in a positive way, because it must not be a negative way. I think it is in Denmark, this strong community. I think in Copenhagen, the part of the city was run by this type of people, isn't there? I'm not sure.
Yeah, Christiania. Yeah, it was like a city in a city where they had their own laws and own rules and did things in a different way.
How did that work out?
It's still going. It's looking at doing fine. I think it's more popular than ever amongst tourists. And this is interesting because when Anna came to Copenhagen, coming from Russian society, she didn't want to go near it. This alternative society was not something which was going to be interesting for her. Whereas Germans, especially, they love this idea of having an alternative way of doing things. So I think it's great. I think it's going. It's still going.
We have 2.5 minutes left. So just for you to know.
It's a fascinating word, and I, like usual, we have not touched this. We haven't scratched the surface of this one, but each path that we could go down is a whole conversation in itself. But it's a good word.
Yeah, but I think freedom requires rules. It sounds so contradictory, but to have freedom, we must have rules.
And can we write these rules? I don't think so, because as we said, everybody has a slightly different, and it must be a common rule. So I think it will be very difficult, which does not mean impossible, but it's a question.
Okay, maybe the rules. I think we would have World War III if we tried to write the rules down. But maybe if we use the word instead of freedom, use the word respect, then we could come up with agreement as to how to treat each other and how I treat myself and how I want to be treated.
That makes sense. This is great end of the discussion. Thank you both for spending the time in here, and we will see each other next week, and have a nice time. Free of waste and wasting in all its form. Stay safe, be free, and be human. Because with respect, I think the humans can take over again, because it was a long time when the giants ruled us. So see you next week. Enjoy the week and have a nice time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.